Inside Unmanned Systems in Exponential 2025 here in Houston with the Northern Plains UAS test site. And would you like to just briefly kind of introduce yourself and introduce the Northern Plains UAS test site for those who may not be familiar?
Yeah, great. So my name is Erin Roesler. I work for the Northern Plains UAS test site as the Deputy Executive Director there. And we do all things related to UAS and drones, right? Of how to integrate drones into the national airspace. Northern Plains is one of the 7 FAA federal test sites. I've been working in this space 11 years now, trying to champion UAS integration.
We're also 11 years old. Look
right?
at that.
Everyone's trying, fighting hard. And so we're always working with FAA, with partners, with clients in research projects to integrate, UAS in the NAS, whether that be through new technologies, policy development, regulatory approvals, pushing new regulations. The whole gamut is what we really do.
Great. So, I guess in terms of that, kind of broad scope of your test site. You're able, you're helping develop rules and standards that are going to help, UAS scale within the national airspace system. What are some of, you guys recently announced a partnership, a few partnerships and some initiatives, and in terms of, what does the work look like today in terms of like bringing this to life? Yeah,
I always say that, policy and regulation, and I think we all say policy and regulation are the greatest barriers that any UAS company or operator has to really scaling at large. But right behind the lack of, or right behind policy and regulation, the second greatest barrier is the lack of shared use infrastructure. Meaning we have road, railways, air traffic control systems. That's all examples of shared use infrastructure that UAS really doesn't have today.
Right.
Some UAS, large UAS, can leverage, airport infrastructure and air traffic control services, but that's not what the vast majority of the industry needs.
Right.
We need surveillance and communication links so that when I truly want to fly, beyond visual line of sight, I can do that. And you need the infrastructure to support that. So, as a test site, that's what we recognized. In fact, it was as the state of North Dakota, that's what we recognized about 6 years ago. And so we started an initiative that was called the Statewide Network.
Okay.
Very quickly, we realized it was way more than a traditional infrastructure program, and it got branded Vantis. Okay. So Vantis is the state of North Dakota's beyond visual line of sight, system. At its core, it is infrastructure. It's aiming to bring ground-based surveillance, ADS-B, surveillance, command and control links in a networked fashion, meeting the performance requirements to enable drones to fly beyond visual line of sight. Whether it be small drones, large drones, into controlled airspace, uncontrolled airspace, the whole gamut. It's a high bar to meet, but that's been the vision for the state of North Dakota, because we recognize that's where we're really going to see the economic returns that the UAS industry can bring.
Excellent. So what are some of the things that you've been able to do in North Dakota that at scale, could, be big, drivers for the industry, let's say, nationally?
So we started the statewide network and then Vantis by deploying out in a key site area. Okay. Today we've expanded. We actually bring this shared use infrastructure to about 5,000 square miles. I know other people are in this space and they've been able to accomplish hundreds of square miles, but no one's quite unlocked the thousands yet. But that's still nowhere near the scalability that we need as a nation.
Right.
And so we always had this vision of, well, how do we leverage existing infrastructure that gets us to that scalability, in particular on surveillance, because radar surveillance is expensive. Radars are not cheap, and to get the performance out of a radar that you need to have for reliability, a latency, track fusion type aspect, that's even more expensive. But we as a nation have radar surveillance over a vast majority of the country. If we could tap into that, that would be the key to unlocking scalability. The problem is that is FAA surveillance, FAA radars, and that's never been done before. Not to a non-federally sanctioned entity. They haven't shared that unfiltered data for use in this commercial sector.
Right.
But you mentioned one of our partnerships. We've been working with the FAA over the last 3 years. We actually just entered into an agreement in January to be the first FAA Radar Data Pathfinder program.
Oh, wow.
Where we will be receiving that unfiltered radar data.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
So we can prove out that we can meaningfully contribute to UAS integration in the NAS. It's a lot of work. We got a long road ahead of us.
Yeah.
But we're really optimistic that'll be the key to scalability, because now that unlocks the vast majority of the country that brings surveillance that will enable beyond visual line of sight for UAS.
Wow, okay, so you're going to be able to use the, FAA is sharing their surveillance data with you, and you're sort of the trailblazers in putting that to work in terms of UAS deployment. And, it sounds like that's sort of a really major achievement and really important stepping stone for broader NAS adoption, right?
Exactly, and we weren't the only ones to recognize this. In the last reauthorization of 2024,
yes.
Section 905 did actually require the FAA to pursue a radar data pilot program. And the way this will work is the Pathfinder program that we are a participant of is a precursor to any of the participants, the qualified users that will become pilot programs. And so we're optimistic that we'll set a good foundation, not only for ourselves to expand and hopefully bring Vantage services beyond the state of North Dakota. We've been working with Michigan, we've been working with the state of Tennessee, and so to bring our services there, but then also enable other users, other entities, other service providers to also access the data, should they meet the requirements, because they're not easy to meet.
I'm sure.
But what the caveat is, I think that's going to be a huge enabler for UAS and the industry as a whole.
Absolutely, yeah. So when we think about that, sort of scale, for North Dakota, what are some of the primary kind of UAS, applications, and is it like rural medical deliveries, or what's kind of the for the plains and that part of the country? What are some of the main kind of use cases? Yeah,
I always like to say we don't have a last mile problem, we have a last 100-mile problem. So you're definitely right on the rural aspect of things. But the industries that we see the most are on two kind of different sectors. One being in the public safety and public services. So we're seeing state and community public safety entities being the greatest adopter of UAS. So not necessarily the commercial service coming in and doing medical deliveries, but you're seeing first responder units now leveraging a lot of the tactical BVLOS approvals on how they can, as a unit, deploy a drone and help expand their services. Then on the other side is we do have a large amount of DoD-like in the defense sector service providers in North Dakota as well. General Atomics, Northrop Grumman, they both have some huge facilities in Grand Forks, and they're bringing a lot of their UAS fleets and training to the ecosystem there as well.
Excellent. So really amazing work, super interesting, and exciting to hear about this kind of foundational element, kind of this foundation layer that hopefully when we are talking in exponential 2026, there will be some amazing developments, which I guess looking out in terms of that horizon, what's the timeline look like? I mean, I know it's hard to nail down, but what's the sort of, roughly the vision for, for operationalizing some of the work that you're able to do with that FAA data?
Yeah. So right now, the 5,000 square miles that's supported by state infrastructure, that's operationalized today.
Okay.
But through this Pathfinder program, it's a one-year program. So as we go into 2026, we'll be wrapping up that program and we'll be coming out with lessons learned. Again, this is a partnership with the FAA. This isn't meant to be done in secret. So I plan to be here next year talking more about the lessons learned, talking about the findings, and talking about how we feel this really does meaningfully contribute to UAS integration into the NAS. But we won't be done. after a year.
Sure,
It's a
sure.
monumental achievement.
yeah.
But I really hope that we have lessons learned and areas that we can then start charting the next agreement. How does this expand to more states, to more entities, to more users? Supporting not only the FAA, because this helps them with UAS integration, but all the other commercial use cases as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and it lays the foundation for for regulators and industry to co-collaborate and
Yeah.
to kind of 2 + 2 = 5.
Yes.
Well, that's fantastic. Thanks so much. Really appreciate
Thank
the
you for having
information.
me.
Yeah.